We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara in Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 23b. The Gemara is in the middle of a brisa to prove that by Yerushalayim, Eino Mevia Egla Arufa, that Yerushalayim, you don't bring an Egla Arufa. Rashi over here says, Eino Mevia Egla Arufa, Dechsiv Ki Motzei Chol Ba'adama V'gomer L'Rishta. When it talks about Egla Arufa, it says you find a dead body in your area of inheritance. Ve'en Yerushalayim Yerusha. Yerushalayim is not considered an inheritance. To Kasavar, because this particular brisa holds, Lo Nischalko L'Shvatim, Yerushalayim wasn't given over to the Shvatim, it was not given to any particular shevet, and therefore there's no Egla Arufa. V'yod, and further the Gemara asks, Lo noda mihi koksiv. When it comes to Egla Arufa, that whole halacha only applies when you don't know who the murderer was. So how come we're talking about Egla Arufa in the case of the Kohanim racing up the ramp of the Mizbeach? In this case, it was clear that one Kohen murdered another. Why are we even bringing up Egla Arufa in this case? V'hanoda mihi ko. In this case, we know exactly who struck the Kohen. So the Gemara rather says, Ella rather kedei laharbos bevechia. The reason why Rabbi Tzadok mentioned Egla Arufa was just to increase the crying over the situation. He wanted to give musar to the people that they were taking murder in a way that wasn't serious enough. The Gemara then continues, Ba'aviv shel Tinok, the father of the Kohen came, umatzo kashum efarfer, he found that he was convulsing. Amar, he said, Areu kaparaschem, he said it should be an atonement for you. V'adayin b'ni kayim v'chulu, and then he said, my son is still alive, let's save the knife from becoming tamei. L'lamedcha, this comes to teach you, shekasha aleim taras kalim, yoser mishvichas damim, that at that time, it was more important to them to keep the kalim pure than it was to avoid murder. So the Gemara says, they asked the following question. Shvichas damim hu dezal? Was it that at that time that they didn't take murder seriously? Aval taras kelim kedekayim akayim, but when it came to the purity of the vessels, that was the same as always. In other words, there was no increased concern over tahara. It was just that there was decreased concern over murder. Odilmor, maybe shvichas damim kedekayim akayim. Murder was as serious as it always was. Aval taras kelim hi dechamir, but somehow taras kelim became such a strict thing at that time. So the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here, midakadnasav la Talmud, because as it goes on over there in the Gemara in the previous Amud, it says, V'gam dam naki shafach Menashe. It says, we're going to show you that murder was not taken seriously, because in the times of Menashe also, there was a lot of innocent blood that was spilled. Shma mina, you see from this comment, Shvichas damim hu dezal, that when it came to murder, they didn't take it seriously. Betaras kelim kedekayim akayim, in terms of the purity of kelim, that was as serious as it always was. And the Gemara continues, Taner Rabbanan, we learned in a brisa, Ufashat v'lavash begadim acherim v'hotzias hadeshin. It says in the pasuk that after the Kohen did the Trumas hadeshin, he lifted the ashes from the Mizbeach, he would change his clothing, and then he would take the ashes outside of the camp. So Shomani Kederach Yom Kippurim, I might think that it's similar to what happens on Yom Kippur, meaning on Yom Kippur the Kohen Gadol would constantly be changing his garments from the big day Zohav to the big day Lavan. So here also Shaposhet big day Kodesh v'lovesh big day Chol. Maybe he has to take off the big day Kodesh, the holy garments, and just put on regular clothing in order to take the ashes outside of the camp. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says Ufashat es begadav v'lavash begadim acherim. It says he takes off the first set of clothing and he puts on other clothing. We compare the new garments that he's putting on to the ones that he took off. Malahalan big day kodesh, just like he's taking off garments that are holy. Afkan big day kodesh, so too the ones that he wears in order to take the ashes outside of the camp, they should also be big day kodesh. If so, what does it say acherim? What does it mean that they're different kinds of garments? The answer is pechusin mehem. The brisa says it has to be garments that are not as nice as the first ones, because here you're doing something you might get dirty. You don't want to use the same garments you use to take out the ashes for the other avodah you do in the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Eliezer says, Acherim v'hotzi. The way we darshan this pasuk is we say others can take out the ashes. Limit ala kohanim ba'alei mumin sheksherin lahotzi hadeshin. What this pasuk is really teaching us, according to Rabbi Eliezer, is that even a kohen who's a baal mum, even a kohen who has a blemish, is allowed to take the ashes outside of the camp. So the Gemara now says, Amar Mar, the master says, Acherim pechusin mehen. According to the Tanakama, the Brisa, you wear clothing that are still big day kodesh, but they're not as nice, they're not as high quality as the other clothing. Kedetana devei Rabbi Yishmael, like it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. Tetana devei Rabbi Yishmael, it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. Begadim shebishel behen kedera l'rabo. The same garments you use to cook something for your master, lo yimzog behen kos l'rabo. You don't put on those garments, a person doesn't put on those garments to pour a cup for his master. Meaning, if you're using clothing and they're getting dirty in the process of cooking, don't use those when you're serving the meal to the master. Same thing over here in the Beis HaMikdash, don't use clothing for the taking out of the deshen for other avodah. That's going to be dirty clothing, it's not going to be nice. The Gemara now says, Amar Reish Lakish says, K'machlokas b'hotzah, kach machlokas b'harama. This machlokas that occurs by the hotzah, taking out the ashes, the same thing is true when it comes to the Trumas Hadeshin. In other words, according to Reish Lakish, the shita that holds that you're allowed to take out the ashes with Kohanim who have blemishes would also hold you're allowed to do the Trumas Hadeshin with those who have blemishes. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, but Rabbi Yochanan says, no, machlokas b'hotzah. The whole machlokas is when you're taking the ashes outside of the camp, so then there's a machlokas, could a Kohen do it if he has a blemish or not? Avol b'harama, but when it comes to the Trumas Hadeshin itself, taking the ashes off the Mizbeach, Divrei Hakol Avoda, everyone says that's considered an Avoda. For sure you have to use a Kohen who does not have a blemish. Gemara says, my time with the Reish Lakish, what's the reason of Reish Lakish? Amar Lach, Reish Lakish says to you, Isal Kadaitach Avoda, if you think the Trumas Hadeshin is really an Avoda, Yesh Lach Avoda Sheksheira B'Shnei Kelim, is there an Avoda that's kosher with only 2 garments? Now the idea over here is that in the Pasuk itself, it only mentions wearing 2 garments when it talks about the Trumas Hadeshin, and therefore Reish Lakish takes the Pasuk literally. You only wear 2 garments, and therefore it's not an avoda. It can be done even with a Kohen who has a blemish. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, Gali Rachmana B'Ksonis u'Michnasayim. The Torah says that the Kohen should wear the Ksonis and the Michnasayim. V'uadin l'mitznefes v'yavnin. And of course, the Kohen should wear the mitznefes and the avnin as well. In other words, by the Trumas Hadeshin, of course, according to Rabbi Yochanan, you have to wear all 4 garments, and it is an avoda. It cannot be done with someone who has a blemish. So why is it that the Torah only mentions the Ksonis and the Michnasayim? So Rabbi Yochanan says each one is to tell us a particular halacha. So mido bad, mido kemidaso. When it comes to the Ksonis, it says the language mido bad. It means the Ksonis has to fit him exactly. It can't be too long on him. It can't be too short. And Michnasei vad, when it says Michnasei vad, what does that teach us? L'chiratanya teaches us the following: Minayin shelo yehi davar kodem lemichnasayim. How do you know that nothing should go on the Kohen before he wears the Michnasayim, the trousers? Shenamar, like the pasuk says, Michnasei vad yilbash al besaro. It says the Michnasayim have to go al besaro, on his skin. That's the first garment that the Kohen puts on. Reish Lakish mido kemidaso. So Reish Lakish, how does he learn out that it has to be kemidaso? How does he learn out that the Ksonis has to be an exact fit? Midafki rachmana b'lashon mido. That's just from the fact that the Torah uses a strange language of mido. In other words, according to Reish Lakish, as we said before, Reish Lakish says when it says the 2 garments, it means only those 2 garments. So we're not going to learn out anything from the fact that it identifies those 2, because you only wear those 2. But you learn out that the Ksonis has to be an exact fit from the fact that it says mido. That's a strange language. So therefore we learn out it's got to be exactly kemidaso. And shelo yehi davar kodem lemichnasayim. How do you learn out that when it comes to the michnasayim, that's the first garment that the Kohen puts on? Me'al besaro nafka. That's also learned out from the fact that it says on his skin, on his flesh. It doesn't need to say that. It could just say to wear the michnasayim. The fact that it says al besaro tells you the michnasayim are worn first. And the Gemara continues, name it katanoi, let us say it's a machlokas tanoi, meaning whether the Kohen wears 4 garments by the Trumas Hadeshin or just 2 garments is actually a machlokas tanoim. The Gemara continues, al besaro, because the pasuk says you wear it on his flesh. Ma'atamad lomer yilbash. Why does it also have to say yilbash? Lahavi mitznefes v'yavneit laharama. Comes to teach you don't only wear, again, like we said before, you don't only wear the Ksonis and the Michnasayim, you also wear the mitznefes and the avneit when you do the Trumas Hadeshin. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So again, it seems that Rabbi Yehuda is going like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says you wear the Ksonis and the Michnasayim and also the mitznefes and the avneit. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says over here. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Dosa Omer, Rabbi Dosa says, L'rabos bigdei kohen gadol b'yom kippurim sheksherin l'kohen hedyot. Rabbi Dosa says the pasuk is teaching us something else entirely. It's teaching you that the begadim of the kohen gadol on Yom Kippur, after the kohen gadol uses those begadim on Yom Kippur, a kohen hedyot can use it all year. In other words, the kohen gadol on Yom Kippur wears just 4 begadim. It's the same 4 begadim that a kohen wears in general. So a regular kohen can use those exact garments. And Rashi over here says, Rabbi Dosa Omer Lahavi Arba bigdei lavan sheshimesh ben kohen gadol b'yom kippurim sheksherin l'hedyot kol hashana. Again, the 4 big day lavan that a kohen gadol uses on Yom Kippur, they can be used by a regular kohen all year. V'yasya yilbash mehasam delotema v'yinicham sham ksiv behu lomar shatuunim gniza. What Rabbi Dosa is saying is, don't say v'yinicham sham means they have to be stored away and never used again. The Sfira Leila Rabbi Dosa v'hinicham sham shelo yishtamish ben liyom ha'kippurim ha'acher. Where Rabbi Dosa says v'hinicham sham simply means a different Kohen Gadol shouldn't use them on a different Yom Kippur, or in general they shouldn't be used on a different Yom Kippur. Kidamrinim and Parakama, like we said in the first parak. That's how he understands v'hinicham sham. So they can't be used on another Yom Kippur, but they could be used by a Kohen Hedyot in the regular avoda throughout the year. That's how Rabbi Dosa understands the drasha in this pasuk. Again, sheksherin leKohen Hedyot. The begadim of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur are kosher for a Kohen Hedyot all year. So Amar Rebbe, so Rebbe responds to Rabbi Dosa, shtei tshuvas bedover. I have two responses to your opinion. Chada, number one, the avneto shel Kohen Gadol lo zeh avneto shel Kohen Hedyot. First of all, the avnet of the Kohen Gadol is not exactly the same as the avnet of a regular Kohen. Rashi over here says, avnet shel Kohen Gadol b'yom ha'kippurim shushal boats. The avnet of a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur is made of linen. Lo zeh avneto shel Kohen Hedyot la'olam. That's not the same as an avnet of a Kohen Hedyot, lefi she'enu meshamish ela b'shel kilayim, because the avnet of a regular Kohen is made of kilayim. It's made of a mixture of wool and linen. So how could you say it's the exact same garments that suddenly we're using the four begadim, the big day lavon of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur are going to be used by Kohen Hedyot? The garments are not exactly identical. V'yod, and furthermore, begadim shenishtameshes ben kedusha chamura tishtamish ben kedusha kala, the same begadim that are used for a strict holiness, meaning they're used on Yom Kippur, you're now going to use them for regular avoda throughout the year, much more lenient kind of avoda. Elamata amad lomar yilbash. So rather, what does the pasuk mean when it says the word yilbash, when it doesn't have to say that word? And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chof Daled Amud Aleph.